I'm indivisible.
Winning and winning and winning.
Oh, Pokecember.
Bum, bum.
Second to the last new
On
Kirblog.
Kirblog.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second to last installment of Pokecember, my month-long of Pokemon-related Kirblogs. But the time this one is going up, this is another of the batch that I'm doing before I leave to go home for the holidays. It's past Christmas, and I hope you all, Christmas or otherwise, had a wonderful holiday season. If you've been listening to all of these throughout the month, if you get any time to hear this one in the midst of all your merrymaking and whatever it is that you're doing this month, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you've been liking this whole journey and everything. And I figured I'd save this one as the second to last because I have something very, very super special planned for the final one of the month. But this is not one that was asked by anybody, but I figured it would be kind of a fun one to tackle because it's a very important, kind of thing that is related to Pokemon as it kind of ties in with, what I've been doing and everything. So I decided that I would take this time to tell the full story for those who haven't heard, and I've probably only really told like bits and pieces of it, like on other Kirblogs, and sometimes it's some convention panels and things. But I wanted to share the full story of how I got to do the voice of a character on the Pokemon anime series, dating all the way back now to, if I'm remembering right, it was the very end of 2009 when I recorded it. But the story begins well before that, in fact. So there used to be this convention around New York City where I lived at the time. And for those of you who don't know, the voice production of Pokemon has been in New York City since the beginning, basically, even way back when 4Kids was doing it. And then, of course, DuArt, Recording Studios is doing it now. But so there was a convention called New York Anime Fest. It was a spin-off of New York Comic-Con that no longer exists anymore, unfortunately. It was kind of eaten up by the main section of Comic-Con itself, basically. That said, so these two voice directors, both of which I have now had the pleasure of working with, Michael Center-Nicholas of MYAV Post and Tom Wayland of DuArt, who also previously worked on a bunch of other shows for like Central Park Media back in the day. We're hosting this contest that, for those of you who have ever seen like Anime Expo Idol, which is Bang Zoom's voice acting competition at AX every year. This Who Wants to Be a Voice Actor kind of contest thing that Tom and Michael were putting on actually predates that by a few years, if I'm remembering correctly. So I tried entering in one year, and unfortunately I didn't get picked for the opportunity to go up and do it in the first place. This was in 2007. But the following year, in 2008, I entered in at basically the very last second. And I went up with my friend Crystal Longquist, who's another voice actress from the New York area at the time. We both entered in, and at the very last second, Jamie McGonigal, who's the voice of a bunch of different characters, including Barry, for instance, and Trip as well in the Black and White series. Basically, he I think put in a good word for me to go up and have a shot at this contest that was happening. And so I went up and I got the chance to enter into this contest. And basically there were 3 rounds of this thing. We had to recite a monologue, which I had written an original piece for. We had to improv, where basically we went through all of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, me and all the other contestants, and we came up with a couple of voices. And then the final thing was we had to actually dub a scene from an anime. It was a show called Joe versus Joe, if I'm remembering right. So I did all 3, and myself and Crystal Longquist actually tied for first place in this contest. And our prize was meant to be a small part in a show that either Michael or Tom was working on. So at the time, Center-Nicholas was not actually directing, I think, any shows. I think he was in the process of moving to LA and doing a lot of voiceover work out there at the time. And I think all of the stuff he was doing was also mainly union, which I wouldn't have been able to work on in the first place. Of course, now, many years later, I've had the great pleasure of getting to work with him and Stephanie Shea on a lot of different shows and movies for MYAV Post, which is awesome. But the other thing that was happening was Tom Wayland was directing Pokemon at the time. But the thing was, you couldn't just be given a part on Pokemon because basically everything with the show had to be approved by the Pokemon Company International. So Tom wasn't able to just like give me a part. However, I actually preferred that, and what ended up happening was I was able to be given an audition. And so I was able to compete for characters on the series like any other actor, basically. And I preferred that because I think that there have been other cases with contests like this where they'll, get a job or an audition and then it just ends up not really going anywhere. But what I got was my foot in the door and the opportunity to show what I was capable of. The contest itself was definitely a way for me to show that I was like, I had some experience and know-how as a performer, because by that point I had been doing, a lot of my early Newground stuff and was doing a lot of voiceover for, those different cartoons and everything. So I had a fairly, decent amount of, knowledge when it comes to, what was good and bad acting, especially for anime stuff. But the real test came when I got my first audition. So the first audition that I ever had in any kind of professional setting was for a character named Riley from Diamond and Pearl. I believe he's also in the video game. He's the guy who kind of looks like the Sir Aaron character from Pokemon Movie 8, and he had a Lucario and everything as well. I read for him. I think he was in maybe 2 or 3 episodes of the Diamond and Pearl series at the time. And so I went in and I read for him. And afterward, Tom Whalen took me aside and he said, listen, I know that we technically owe you because of the contest and all, but I wouldn't really bring you into audition for the show if I didn't think you were good. So that gave me a lot of encouragement, and that was like a fair amount of time, I think, after the contest had happened at the convention and everything, and and so I did that, and I had some newfound confidence, and then another long while, many months passed, and eventually we were up to, I think it was the second season of maybe the third one. It was Galactic Battles, if I'm remembering correctly, was the season that I got called in for, and so this was for this character who basically I had seen pictures of him and his cohort, who at the time I knew them as Kazunari and Kotone. These were the Kotone, of course, is Lyra, the female playable character from what was announced at the time to be Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and Kazunari was her friend that was made specifically for the anime series, and he was a Pokemon breeder, basically. So I'd heard about these characters, and I was super excited about Heart Gold and Soul Silver coming out because, as I had mentioned in a lot of these previous ones, Gold and Silver was my favorite Pokemon game that I got the chance to play, as a kid. So I learned a bit about it, and I was like, okay, well, these might be characters that are coming up. And lo and behold, I actually got called in to audition for them. So this was huge, and because I knew that he was going to be in multiple episodes. Basically, the two characters, if you guys haven't seen these episodes before, it was a 5-episode mini arc that basically was leading up to the release of Heart Gold and Soul Silver. In fact, when the U.S. airing was happening, the weekend I believe after the final of those 5 episodes aired was when the game came out, and so it was a big thing, kind of like back in the day when. Todd from Pokemon Snap was in the show, there to promote, buy Pokemon Snap, et cetera, that kind of thing. And they've done that many times with other characters in the series before. But yeah, so I auditioned, and I really tried to prepare and study and do as best of a job as I possibly could. I went in, I did it. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think that a lot of the other the usual actors that have been on Pokemon a lot at the time were out of town because I think it was pilot season, so a lot of them were off filming other projects and things like that. And Lucian Dodge, who had gone on to voice Chili, the gym leader from Pokemon Black and White, and a bunch of other characters, and he was also Blue in Pokemon Origins when he moved out to California shortly after that. Lucian and I were both in the running, I believe, for the character. And I didn't hear anything back for a while because it seemed like they were waiting to hear approval from Nintendo for what the characters' names were going to be. When I went in to go, a little bit of trivia here, when I went in to go read for the not the two characters, but for Kazunari, he was named Kendall. And I think Lyra or Kotone was named Kalina, if I'm remembering right. And then I think what happened was for Kotone specifically, they wanted to find out what her official English name was going to be, which turned out to eventually be Lyra. So they went with that. And then I think in my case, I think they just eventually changed it, and which of course had led to being Khoury. So there was a little bit of a longer wait than usual on hearing back on what the audition was going to be, or rather what the casting was going to be. So by the time that a week passed, I'd figured, all right, I didn't get it, but it was fun. I tried my best and it was cool or whatever. And then I get a phone call from Lisa Ortiz, fantastic voice actor, so I'm sure you all would recognize from a lot of different series. She was working as a production assistant, I believe, at Duart at the time, and she called me up to let me know that I'd booked the part. And I think I was even in a Skype call with Little Karibo and a few other people at the time, and I broke the good news to them, and they were like, "Oh my God, you're going to be on Pokemon! This is amazing!" etc. And also, embarrassingly, I found out that Lisa had actually left a message on my phone that I guess I had missed earlier that day. And I guess she probably would have heard my incredibly embarrassing earlier phone message that had me referring to myself as Kerber for 15 at one point. So that was a little like, oh, no. So I went in, and I guess I can kind of reveal this now because it's been so many years. This was, I think, like the very end of 2009 was when I went in and I recorded this. But I did go out of my way to go watch the episodes in Japanese, which normally it's not recommended to do that, so you don't get too like stuck in a performance necessarily. But it was funny because the Japanese actor, Kenji Nojima, I believe his name is, he's the Japanese voice of Fox McCloud currently. I was listening to his performance, and he actually sounds a lot like me, like just, obviously different language, of course, but so I didn't really have to. And Khoury was such a really like comfortable character for me because I feel like Khoury is exactly who I would be if I existed in the Pokemon world. He was a very like, kind of awkward, kind of shy, but like well-meaning, go-getter type of kid and everything. He had a Totodile, which I was really excited about the fact that that a Totodile was my Pokemon. They even brought Casey Rogers back to voice him as well. And because Mike Lucas was one of his favorite Pokemon was Totodile when we were growing up playing the game. So I was like, oh, this is awesome. I'm so excited. So, but yeah, I went in and I watched the episodes ahead of time, mainly because I wanted to get a full context for what was happening in all of the scenes that I had to record in the first place. And that actually did end up being a major help because in that way I was able to save a lot of time by knowing ahead of time what was happening in all of the animation and what the the full scope of the entire episode was and everything. I think I watched like each of them like at least twice each before I went in. Most actors don't have the time to do that sort of thing, and it's not always recommended, so you don't like get too caught up in like what you think it needs to happen, because you have to be open, obviously, to what the director wants you to do. And thankfully, it went really smoothly. I don't think I could have had a better first voiceover gig professionally than this. It was a great environment. It was a really simple, comfortable character for me to do. It was and what I was really happy about was my character. Like, for one thing, it's, he got to do all the catchphrases. He got to have a battle with Team Rocket. He got to have a double battle between him and Lyra versus Ash and Dawn at the time. He got to catch a Pokemon. I caught a Gibble. My Totodile evolved into a Crocodile. I got to do all the, like, I choose you and, use Water Gun and I caught blah, 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 go Pokeball, all that stuff. I did all of the stuff that you would, growing up, that I grew up with in the series. I got to do all of that in the show. And even more so, because my character was only in 5 episodes, and he had a beginning, middle, and an end, basically, my character got an arc. And, because Lyra was the more kind of, like, confident in herself, sort of character who really, like, knew what she was doing and was, like, all badass and stuff. But with Khoury, because he kind of had to, man up and gain his confidence, he had, like real development over the course of those 5 episodes. And I got to like evolve him as a character all the way through, those 5 that I recorded. So it was 3 sessions that we did, 3-hour sessions, if I'm remembering correctly, for the 5 episodes that I did. I think if I'm remembering right, I think it was the final one might have just been the 1 session. I think I can't remember because it's kind of been a while. But yeah, it was a wonderful experience. I remember kind of a little minor story in between. I had mentioned to a few friends of mine, like, oh, I booked a role on Pokemon. I can't say what it is, but I booked a professional gig, and I'm really excited to be working on it. And I was like, oh, cool. And there was a guy who will remain nameless who was kind of giving me – actually, there were 2 people. There was one guy who was giving me kind of a snide remark of like, well, the only reason that you're even doing this is because you won a stupid contest or whatever. Like, they're probably not even like paying you the same amount that they do for other actors. And there was another person who was like, I know who that character is from the Japanese version. I wouldn't cast you in that part. And so I think it was after the second session. It was in the middle of the second session of the 3 that I had. Lisa Ortiz, the production assistant, was there. And I was talking with her, and I was like, Lisa, I know this is probably silly, but like, I'm being treated the same as any other actor on this, right? Because like, I don't know, I feel like because of the contest and blah, blah, I basically like implied to her like what these people had told me, and she was like, you earned this part like any other actor. You auditioned and you booked it. You're getting paid like anybody else. Don't let what anybody else says get to you. Like, you're doing a good job. You're doing your job on this gig. And that made me feel way, way, way better. And then the final episode, which was in the third of the 3 sessions, was a lot of fun because there were a lot of silly, probably not appropriate jokes being tossed around between myself and Tom, and also the sound producer at the time that we had, Carmen Borgia, who's the voice of Palmer in Diamond and Pearl. He walked in on a very crass, not safe for work joke. Thank God he found it was funny, because I was like, oh God, please don't fire me. Oh, Jesus. But yeah, great experience all around. And then I think I was home in Long Island at the time, because I was still in college, of course. I went back home, and my family and I actually woke up on Saturday morning at like 8 o'clock or whatever it was to watch the first episode that I was in. And it was huge. We were so excited, and it was just hearing myself on TV coming out of this character through the animation and everything was so surreal. And it was the fact that it's like my first job was on a show that I grew up with from the beginning when it first came out in the U.S. And I got to play this such a great character that I'm so incredibly grateful that I got the chance to do that. Like, to everybody at the staff on Duart and everybody, and our head producer Tim Warenko, who was really cool as well. I was so incredibly glad that we got to do that. It was awesome. And then also I was at Anime Milwaukee at the time that the 5th episode, I think, had aired, and then right after that, Heart Gold and Still Silver came out. So me and Martin, I was guesting at the convention at the time, and me and Martin actually went out to a GameStop, and we got our copies of the game and played it, and a few other friends of ours got their copies as well. And of course, I picked Totodile, named my trainer Khoury, and I had, I think Mike Lucas, who had a copy of Diamond and Pearl, traded a Gibble to me so I could have that on my team starting off. So it was kind of like I was continuing the story of where they left off, because it ends with Khoury and Lyra go back to Johto to begin their journey, or rather to continue on with their journey, because they were about to fight against one of the next gym leaders. And so I kind of like sort of pretended the rest of it, on my own with all that and everything. It was pretty cool, but that was a lot of fun, and I still look back with fond memories on recording for those episodes. I love watching those episodes. I'm actually still very proud of my performance on it. And even though that was the beginning of my career and I've gotten a lot better as an actor now, I think that what I did on Khoury was actually pretty solid, and I think it still holds up. And, there's not very many things like that I often look back on, but I'm very glad that I got to do that. Later on, I was also called in. I did a minor character named Roran on an episode of Black and White during the N storyline with Team Plasma and all that. He was a character who was a little boy who had a Haxorus that was destroying the town because Team Plasma had hypnotized it. Just one episode as a little brief character, and I didn't have to audition for it. Tom actually just brought me in to do that, which was really cool. And I did some additional voices on an episode of Pokemon Black and White, or rather, sorry, Pokemon X and Y, I should say. By this point, I obviously had not gotten the part of Clement, but I got to sit in on a session by Mikey Lucio, who got Clement, and he was super cool. And we actually talked about growing up with Pokemon, because he played the games when he was a kid as well. And I got to do some additional voices for the episode where they go to his gym, and there was the Robo Clement, the Clembot, I believe, which was a lot of fun. And that's kind of been the end of my journey on the show. It's funny, it kind of to end it on this note as well. Some people were being very nice and saying, "Oh, it would have been cool if you booked Clement on Pokemon X and Y at the time." The funny thing is, I think it would have been a lot of fun, but at the same time, I'm really glad that Mikey got it, because he's a super nice guy and really cares about the character. But also, if I had booked Clement, I would still be in New York right now recording the show for the next several years. I wouldn't have gone out here. I wouldn't have gotten to see all my friends and make a lot of new friends when I moved to California. I wouldn't have gotten to do Tales of Zestiria or Lull in the Sea or Disgaea or any of this stuff. I might not have even done Y2K potentially or a lot of the other stuff that I've done since I moved out here. So, I don't regret that I didn't get the part. I'm really happy for Mikey. I'm really glad that he's been able to do the show all this time. And, I'm just really grateful that this was my first voiceover job professionally, was getting to work on a show like Pokemon that has meant so much to me. And that's why I felt this was a good one to kind of save for a little bit later, this topic. But, yeah, that's kind of it. That's kind of really the end of the story. So thank you all for listening. I hope this was a lot of fun. I know I've probably repeated again a lot of this information in bits and pieces and other Kirblogs, but I hope that having it all together in one thing was a fun time. Maybe someday I might get the chance to do something else for Pokemon. I would love to come back and play another character someday. There are lots of other ones that I auditioned for. I read for Keldeo and Lucas and a few other characters like that, kind of throughout Black and White and different things like that. But, who knows? Maybe I'll get the chance again someday. If, you never know. I'd have to go back. I would love to go back to New York and see my family and all my friends and everything in the process. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you all for listening. We have one more very awesome Kirblog for Pokecember coming up. It's with a special guest who does not have, just to not get your hopes up, he has nothing to do with the Pokemon franchise. It's not like a voice actor or like anybody from Game Freak or anything like that. But it's a new guest that we've never had on Kirblog before, one who is incredibly special for me for reasons that will be very obvious when you hear who it is. And we're going to talk about a lot of Pokemon stuff for all of the years that it's been going on in the U.S. It's going to be a lot of fun. So look forward to that for the final Pokecember Kirblog for this month before we enter into 2016. In the meantime, leave a comment on, have you seen the episodes with Khoury and Lyra in them? What did you think of them? Did you like how they turned out? Did you like his story? If not, you can go find them on the Diamond and Pearl Pokemon DVDs. I think they might be on on iTunes or some other places you can legally download them as well. So go check those episodes out if you haven't. I highly recommend them. They're a great little mini arc of 5 episodes. And that's going to do it. So, hope you all enjoyed, and I will catch you all like my Totodile, like my Gibble, like my collection of... Bye.